Hello and welcome to VGC's Reviewer Roundtable for Diablo 4. I'm Jordan Midler, joined by Adam Potter of Mirror Gaming and Lauren Bergen of PC Games N. How are we doing, folks?
Yeah, really good. Thanks for having us.
We've decided to stick with the hell theme by recording this on a disgustingly warm day. It's
As if my face doesn't give it away.
Yeah. I'm sitting here with like 4 lights on because the show must go on. It doesn't matter that I was like,
the games still need reviewing.
I was heavy sick last week. I'm not quite over it, and I'm still here. It's like 24 degrees here. The thing is, Lauren, you're a fellow Scot, so we're not built for this. How is it over your way?
It's not good. Like, it is warm. Like, the thing is you don't expect it to be warm. Like, you go, oh, okay, cool. I can still wear like shorts and a t-shirt and it's going to be fine. But no, it is hot and I don't like it. I don't know how to deal with it.
No, I wear exclusively black, and that is apparently not what you're supposed to do when it's like this. But we've had plenty of experience in hell because we've spent the past couple of weeks finally with Diablo 4. Although it's a weird situation because I was playing through it and I was like, I've already played tons of this stuff through the betas, etc. Top level, Aaron, how are you feeling on Diablo 4?
Oh, man. I mean, we were saying this just before the show started, but I feel like 2023 is being a banner year for AAA exclusives so far. And Diablo 4 has just come along to remind people that, you know, Activision Blizzard, spoiler alert, they're pretty good at this whole dungeon crawler / hack and slash loot dungeon thing.
You wonder why Microsoft wants to acquire them. It's like, oh, what can they do?
Well, let's not get into that. That's like a whole other conversation because, well, I mean, Overwatch 2, really? But yeah, from the top level, like Diablo 4, it's just like a gigantic game that really is addicting the more that you play it. I find it hard to put the controller down. Behind the scenes, to lift the curtain up a little bit, Activision Blizzard during the review period, they're playing fast and loose with the server switch on and switch offs. And I found out that when that like came, it was like, I just want to play more. I just want to play more. And now I'm already starting to fear that, similar to another game we had to review this year, am I gonna have to like restart a new character again, considering that I've played 3 betas already? Now playing it for review, and I'm like, oh my god, please let me keep my necromancer. I put so much time and effort into him. But yeah, in summary, Diablo 4, it's another game of the year contender. I'm sorry to break it to everyone. Yeah.
It's a nightmare. How are people? There's a cost of living crisis on, mate. We need to stop recommending people buy these games. It's an anti-service. Lauren, how are you on Diablo 4?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's similar to Aaron in that I agree that I've played the game like 3 times now, just over different betas, different tests and whatever. So initially I was like, okay, this feels the same because I've done it like 3 times already. But see, when you get past those initial kind of teething things that you've already done, when you skip through the dialogue, which is awful, and I'm sorry for doing it, but it is the truth. The game gets so much better. I think Act 4 is where it really starts to pick up. And I played Rogue, which was not a fun class to start with. Like, it's super slow to get going, but when it gets going, it's so much fun. And I genuinely don't think I've had that much fun in a Diablo game for a really long time. So it's like, again, I played these games for many years, but I think at the minute this one potentially is honestly the best so far.
I wrote in my review, if this is still in the final review because it might have been taken out, that at times I was worried I was becoming one of those people that you'd hear about during the World of Warcraft era that would die in internet cafes because they would like forget to eat, and like they'd be found just skeletal on the cafe floor because I was just, the hours would sink away, even though I was doing stuff that I'd already done before, even though obviously from a mechanical perspective, a lot of the ramp in Diablo before you're level 50 is very basic. You're not having to really pay attention massively to what you're doing, but it was just so engaging and perfectly paced in terms of every 5 minutes there's a little dopamine hit, every 5 minutes there's a new thing to do, there's a new place to see, and then those would combine into the big hits, and it was really difficult to pull myself away from on my travels. Adam, what's your Diablo experience like prior to 4?
Yeah, I'll hold my hands up and say that like Diablo 1, Diablo 2, they completely passed me by because I am first and foremost like a console player. But Diablo 3 ended up actually being quite a formative game for me because when it came out 2013, 2014 time, I picked it up on PlayStation 4 with the Reaper of Souls expansion built in, of course, as I imagine like a lot of PlayStation 4 players would have, because that was like one of 5 games that released on the platform at the time. I don't know if anybody remembers that far back, but yeah, and with the PS4 being like the first console I purchased with my own money, like it was kind of, I was just aching for things to play, and I'd finished with Black Flag. So basically, I played Diablo 3 with the Reaper of Souls expansion, played it through once, absolutely loved it, played it through again with friends. Then I picked it up on Nintendo Switch, where for me, if anybody wants to fight me on this, feel free, but Diablo 3, it was made for Nintendo Switch. I mean, we've got the Steam Deck now, times have changed, but it's just so easy. If you think it's hard to pull yourself away from a massive screen, man, if Zelda wasn't out right now, like I'm pretty sure that I would be, between now and waiting for the servers to go live again, I would have been picking up Diablo 3 all over again. So yeah, that's basically just like the short form summary is I've never played 1, never played 2, but absolutely adored 3, even though I never really dipped into it too much in terms of returning for the seasons, playing multiple respecing classes and stuff. But it in terms of just turn your brain off, sort of hack and slash action, perfect podcast game in my opinion. Like as you're saying, Jordan, perfect dopamine hit. And like I'm glad that there's more, because I can't believe it's been 10 years in the space from Diablo 3 and Diablo 4. Like, wow, but boy was it worth it.
Makes me feel sick, because I remember going to the shop to buy Diablo 3. Like I remember it very specifically, and me and my mate playing it, because we played it on PS4 as well back in the days where it was like you only had FIFA 14 and what, Killzone, Shadowfall, those bangers.
Yeah.
The Order 1886, pour one out.
Infamous Second Son.
Oh, whoa. We do not talk about shit about Infamous Second Son.
Whoa. Infamous 2 is the best there ever was, but this is a different podcast.
I agree with you. Welcome to the Infamous cast.
I'm just going to go get popcorn. Like I could just sit here.
I'm sorry that these amazing games don't come to the personal computer. Enjoy your spreadsheets while we're over here playing The Last of Us in a way that works.
In a way that works, yeah.
But that was the kind of eye-opening thing for me, because when I'd heard about Diablo, because you hear about these franchises that you can't really access, because also I didn't really have a PC back then or whatever. Yeah. And then playing through Diablo 3, when I first played it, I was like, I didn't expect this to be this isometric thing. I didn't expect it to be so, like, not action light, but you're like, you press one button and then this massive flurry of attack happens, and you're like, I didn't really do this. This doesn't. And then 5 hours later, me and my mate are still up on a PS4 chat being like, oh, this fucking orange thing just dropped. What's this? Like, it was such a, that was really where the addiction started. What about yourself, Lauren? When did you get in the Diablo train?
Well, to be honest with you, it was one of those things. When I was at uni, I was introduced to League of Legends, and that was like the first PC game like I ever played. And I played it on like, am I allowed to swear?
I go for it.
I didn't know. Look, I didn't know if this was a Christian podcast talking about Diablo. Okay, like,
oh yeah, VGC stands for Video Game Christ. Yeah,
Naris might come for you.
But look, it was one of those things. I played it on a shitty MacBook, and that was my PC. So again, I didn't have access to a PC until like 3-4 years ago. And I loved Blizzard games from the get-go. For me, it was Heroes of the Storm, RIP. And that was where I found out about all the Diablo characters. I played Auriel, I played, Imperius. So went and played Diablo 3 as Witch Doctor, like maybe F tier in IRL, but S tier in my heart. And I loved my Witch Doctor so much that I played another Witch Doctor, and then I went, and I played Monk. But the hype around that point was Diablo 2 Resurrected, and everyone was like, oh my god, you need to play Diablo 2, like Diablo 2 dwarfs Diablo 3. And I was like, okay, cool. I played 2 Resurrected, I reviewed it for Dessert at the time, and I really liked it. Then Diablo Immortal came out. I liked the story. I didn't like everything else that was corporate about it.
You spent thousands of pounds on it. You're one of those stories, weren't you? You spent 100 grand on gems or whatever it was.
Okay, like, we're not meant to be honest on this podcast, what you on about? But yeah, no, it was one of those. Like, I liked the storyline, and I never completed it because I just got to a point where I was like, the microtransaction side of this is ruining this game. So for me, it was like Diablo 4 was that shining beacon of Dragonflight wasn't for me, Overwatch 2 wasn't for me. Diablo 4 had to be that thing, that light at the end of the tunnel, almost. And yeah, having played through the betas and stuff, I think it definitely got the feeling of Diablo 2, which is what I loved. With the combat of Diablo 3, which I really loved because it was so flashy, and you're right, there's orange shit dropping all over the place, and you're like, this is badass, and I love it. But thankfully without the microtransaction chaos of Immortal.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that you saying Diablo Immortal then was the first time I'd thought about that game, like since all the news happened about it. Now that now that proper fucking Diablo is back, it's like, oh yeah, this is why people were so upset about it, because when it's this good, it's this good.
I think that's the thing. Like they've got the MMO format that Immortal has, and that you've got more players in a world. You've actually got an open world instead of like specific zones that you can explore, but it only is that zone. And that's good. I really like that side of Immortal, and I did think as a Diablo story, you get that hit of dopamine and that nostalgia with Deckard Cain and all that type of thing. But it was just the microtransaction side that killed it, which is what I hope they don't do with Diablo 4, and is what they're saying they won't do with Diablo 4.
Yeah, this review may age terribly, but Aaron, in terms of the world of Diablo 4, where we're starting off, how did that hit you? Just in terms of like, a lot of people have seen it because of the betas and stuff like that, but aesthetically, the story, why we're here smashing things to bits, were you into it, or was it something you're not really paying attention to?
Yeah, it's kind of weird with Diablo games, because thinking back to Diablo 3, other than like the sort of certain plot points like Deckard Cain biting the dust, I think it was in Act 2 or something.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoiler alert for a 10-year-old game. It's kind of like, when I think back to my time, it is just about those stories you make with friends that are on your headset, and like, oh, do you remember the time that we fought this boss together and you got that awesome piece of loot? And I'm excited, like, even though we've been playing it for review now, as cliche as it sounds, I'm excited for my friends to all get on board. We had a bit of that during the beta and stuff, but really I think we've only seen sort of like the start of how these classes are going to be able to interact with each other, especially when you go in and start, adding world bosses into the equation, and sort of like the fact that there is PvP in the game. But in terms of the world itself, obviously, I think it was wise for Activision Blizzard to set it in a new territory of Sanctuary. It takes place decades after the events of Reaper of Souls, because it's easy to get in. And they don't really, even though like it's a bit top heavy in terms of like, there's this chick called Lilith and she's really mad, but you swallowed some rose petals, so you're intrinsically linked. Good luck on your way off to kill some beasties. And then as soon as I met Chris Finch from The Office, I was like, well, now I am totally in.
Chris Finch, who is also in Final Fantasy 16 as Sid. He's all over the place now.
He is all over this. And I looked at his like video game IMDb, because I remember him being in Assassin's Creed Black Flag as well as a key character. And I was like, well, he's got such a good voice. He must have done like loads of stuff. And literally 2023 is Chris Finch's year. Like he'll be lobbing this shoe over like a church roof in Sanctuary in no time, I'm pretty sure. Or a kettle, whatever it was. But no, like the lore's there, it's fine. The characters are fine, I guess. Like I think, Diablo games always have that tricky balance where, you do play as a player created character, so how much influence and agency are you able to have on the story? The truth is that they do a pretty good job. I was lucky enough to speak to the voice actor, I believe it was Joe Baladerma, who voices the male sorcerer class. And fun fact, when I was starting to review this game, I'd already tried the barbarian in the server. Didn't like him at all. I was getting my ass kicked left, right, and center because it was so close range. Constantly dying. I was like, this ain't for me. And then I started off with the sorcerer class. And after about 10 minutes, when I realized that off the bat, you can't smash like barrels and like chests and stuff, I was like, oh no, this ain't going to work. So then I fell back into my comfort zone. That was the necromancer from Reaper of Souls, which I'm so glad that they included in here. And we can talk more about the character classes later, I'm sure. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but there's so much to say about this game. But in terms of the world, coming off of what Lauren said, the fact that it is continuous and it's not broken up into separate acts anymore, and that in the early game you do have a choice of direction of where you want to go, because obviously once you're through the prologue, acts 1, 2, and 3 open up, and there was that temptation there to kind of maybe venture towards the dry steps just to kind of see what's going on, because of obviously we'd already seen a lot of the fractured piece in the server slam and such. But no, I think it's nice to go down to the swampy area and see like the ice of fractured peaks like melt away. They've clearly thought about this world design in a way that feels sort of they influence one another. And obviously you're going to hit load screens because as soon as you hit a dungeon, but even then the load times weren't that long.
What were you playing on? Just for clarity, what were you playing on?
Oh, so I was playing it on PlayStation 5, and I did stick to World Tier 1, because I'm a baby gamer, apparently. Casual gamer, that's it. But no, you know what it's like, you got to get through it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like the story, I feel like even if the story itself, it doesn't end up being that memorable in the grand scheme of things. I feel like the way it's told with the like close-up camera, the CGI cinematics, which everybody has already seen from the betas and stuff, it's just badass, man. And like it's hard to fault in any way. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you find yourself more into the well, you said the dialogue was terrible actually, Lauren. I want you to unpack that for me.
Did I? When did I say this?
I thought you said
I thought she said that to begin with as well, but then I think it kind of jumped off to a separate point.
Oh,
if I remember.
I thought you said the dialogue in this was terrible, and I was like, I'd love to hear that, because if you could listen to the dialogue long enough to decide it was terrible, and not just sit there thinking, what am I going to hit next? I was like, that's impressive.
Yeah. Okay, I've definitely been lost in translation. I definitely do not think the dialogue is. Do you know what? These two are just trying to throw me under the bus. Okay, this is what's happening here. This is what's happening. But no, like I think that generally I think the dialogue in it is great. Genuinely, I think it's one of those games that for me, I do love the story of Diablo. I love the lore. I love going back and being like, okay, who is Inarius? Who is Lilith? Why are they important to this storyline? I think the game does it really well, but it does it in a way that is accessible to new players as well. Because as you go through, they mention Inarius is this, Lilith is this, their relationship is this. Instead of you having to go deep dive back to Diablo 2 and going, okay, here we go, we start again. And, Diablo 3, there's more lore. I think they introduce things that are important as you go, which I thought was really, really good, given just how expansive that universe is. But the other thing I loved with the story in general is that the amount of references to Diablo 2, some to Diablo 3, but mostly knows to Diablo 2. And I won't mention what they are because I don't want to spoil things. But there are so many references that I would maybe pick up on that potentially somebody who's never played the franchise wouldn't pick up on, just given the fact that, these are just characters who pass in and out of your path. But you go, oh my goodness, that's X from Y, or that's X from Y. And I found myself multiple times. There are a couple of boss fights. I was like, oh my God, that character's back. And I was beyond excited. And I audibly felt myself screeching because I was so happy to see these characters come back. My poor little hedgehog that lives next door must be so confused by the noises that were coming out of this room. But I think it was one of those when I was watching it or watching these cutscenes and going, oh my God, I know this person, or I know that person, or this is someone I wanted to see come back, or this is somebody that I thought was, gone and is now coming back. So for me, I think it was the fact that it weaved all of those elements into one another for new players, and that it's really easy accessible. You can, you can read the lore if you want to, but equally you can just go kill things if you want to. But for OG players who have been saying for years, like, we want a Diablo game, we want that darkness, we want that feeling instead of the brightness and the excitement of Diablo 3, this game has that. And I think that because the narrative is so strong, it pulls up the rest of the game as well. Like I said, I wrote an entire piece about, no offense, Aaron, how I hated the necromancer and how it just was not the class for me. And
speak to me after the podcast. I need to dig deeper on this.
Is this going to be the square go outside? Let's go. But like I didn't enjoy it. Whereas when I was playing through the beta, maybe I didn't enjoy it as much because I was like, oh my God, I've already done this story. Whereas with the Rogue, things started really, really slow for me, but I was enjoying it because I was like, I want to get to the next part. I want to see what happens now. Where, I'd already played parts of the game before. So I think the narrative pulls up the rest of the game, even in some cases where I found myself being a bit like, I really, really regret picking this class.
So for me, I love the world. It's absolutely disgusting. Like, I think it's detailed to an almost pointless level, considering the distance from which you play the game. The zoom in function is very nice. Just when you find a specific bit of viscera or something like that, you're like, that's fucking bogging fantastic. So I think all that atmospheric stuff is brilliant. It's very distracting that Chris Finch is in the game for me, but he distracts me in everything he's in. That's my own fault. The main narrative, I'm not getting tons out of it. I'm not sure if that's just I'm not a devotee of the lore. I'm getting very kind of surface level enjoyment out of it, or if it's more of just I'm anxious to just get back out and kill more shit. Like, I just want to be doing things over and over again in this game, and it really speaks to the kind of the fun factor of it. I did play as the barbarian. I played Phoebe Bridger as the barbarian. She was a stunning 15-foot tall woman who smash the shit out of everything. And there's just something so tactile, especially when you get like the whirlwind and you just see this big alley of enemies and you just right through the fucking lot of them. And that just hit me over and over again in terms of I just want to see. I would happily open up into a dungeon of 1,000,000 of these enemies and just have this go and go and go. It's almost cookie clicker-esque at this point. And yeah, it's the as Aaron said earlier, it's such an ultimate podcast game that I'm playing through it and I'm like, I'm going to play through this same bit about 5 more times and listen to this none more times because I'll be listening to some random podcast at the same time. Lauren, what was your primary class and what was your kind of gameplay experience in terms of were you ranging it? Were you getting right in for a Stramash? What was happening?
Yeah, so initially across the betas I've played pretty much all of them. The only one I've not played is Barbarian. That's not the fantasy that I go for. But with the review build, it was Rogue. And I had a kind of look-see because I'm that annoying person that wants to go and like theory craft and do all the builds and all that type of thing. But given we had to get it done, as Aaron mentioned earlier, it was one of those I stuck to a pretty standard Rogue build. It was the I think it's called Shadow Twisting Blades. It's a leveling one, and it's very up close and personal because what I always like, well, in World of Warcraft, I play Shadow Priest. I always go for that super dark, fantasy, that type of thing. I initially did start off like the cold rogue range build, hated it, didn't like it, wasn't for me. Much preferred the up close kind of skirmisher. And it was a slow grind. Like I won't lie to you, the first like 10, 15 levels did hurt my soul a bit. I didn't feel like I was doing any damage. It felt like the earlier bosses were really, really strong by comparison to me. But as soon as you get shadow imbuement, which is you can imbue the rogue's weapons with different types of things. So you've got like poison imbuement, that type of thing, cold imbuement, but out the shadow imbuement. And it was similar to what you were saying, Jordan. Like when you dash into a row of enemies, imbue them with shadow damage, and they just explode. It is so stupidly satisfying. But it's also tactical in that you imbue the middle one. Basically you have 2 attempts to imbue them with shadow magic. You imbue the middle like the middle enemy, they blow up, and then it spreads to other people, and then they blow up, and it's kind of like that almost mushroom crowd nuclear explosion type of shadow magic. And that was what was so sick to me, is there was a tactical element of it of, okay, if I imbue the big guy, then they all get imbued, but also that surface level, I go zoom zoom, I go boom boom, like, and it was so much fun. Like I must admit, I do not regret the build now, but I can admit that I would, if I was a beginner and I'd never played this game before, I would recommend trying something that's not rogue first, because it is a very, very slow grind.
What about yourself, Aaron? What were you working on mainly through the review process?
Yeah, so as the Necromancer, I kind of like built mine to be almost like a mid-range class because, like I said, I was getting my ass handed to me as the Barbarian, at least in the betas periods. I don't know if they've tweaked it since then, the class. And then with the Sorcerer, I was like, I just don't want to be constantly like fleeing and moving away from the action to keep my distance. So the Necromancer, obviously what's good about that is, you immediately start off with your own little badass army of skeleton warriors, as you did in Diablo 3, except here you've got to put an extra degree of thought into it because they just won't appear like willy-nilly. You kind of have to stay conscious of, okay, as soon as I kill an enemy, it's going to leave a corpse. Now, what do I want to do with that corpse? Do I want to raise a skeletal warrior? Do I want to raise a skeletal mage? Or maybe something else that you could potentially create? And it kind of helped, like playing mostly solo, or if not all solo, as part of the review period. It kind of like imbued me with that feeling of I am a squad. We're going out to kick ass, be that in the Swamp area, be that in the Scotland, where it's constantly raining. I don't know if you guys can attest to, because that seems to be the Scottish equivalent up there. So I don't know.
Not today,
with
mate.
all the accents.
Not
today.
We're in the surface of the sun at the moment.
24 whole degrees.
I know.
And then so basically it really rewarded, like risk reward, because as soon as you open up that corpse explosion feature, the one I love so much from Diablo 3, I know I keep going on about it, it's exactly what you're describing, be it the whirlwind or the dark imbuement that Lauren was suggesting, in that it could be a sea of enemies, but all I need to do to gain the upper hand is kill one, and from then it's sort of like corpse explosion, that creates another corpse, boom 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 boom, we are go, it is go time. Meanwhile, I'm sort of, do I want to throw a blood spear? I've got my scythe that I can like keep the enemies at bay at. And towards the end, well, not towards the end, but halfway through the build, unlocked this sort of like blood wall ability, which had like a really big cooldown, which I tried to avoid for the most part of my build. But yeah, in terms of just granting me space, in terms of playing that mid range, I couldn't have. And that's the thing. It sounds like at least with the rogue lore, and that initially for those first 10 to 15 levels, you were kind of like unsatisfied. What's going to happen? And obviously, I guess one of the main drawbacks with Diablo 4 is once you're locked in. You're locked in. You can't switch classes mid-campaign because obviously a lot of the appeal is to build up this class, build your own build. And whereas I feel like the Necromancer, because I always had my skeletal army and there was always that decision making on the fly, it was instantly satisfying from the off for me. So yeah, I don't think I'm ever going back. Necromancer for life, baby. Lauren's shaking her head.
Lauren hates the undead. I wanted to talk about there's a story in one of Jason Schreier's books about like the making of Diablo 3, and they spoke about how bad the original loot in Diablo 3 was, and God it was. How do you feel that the loot is in this game? Because I felt like I wish I noted down when I got my first orange pop. But I had the moment in that book where I got an orange pop and it wasn't from our class. So I was like, fuck me, is this going to be, am I just going to be cursed with this? Thankfully, I got another one pretty quickly after. But what do you think, Lauren, the loot cadence in the game, is it what you were wanting? Is it sometimes too much? Do you wish after a certain level you could just turn off certain tiers of loot?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like 100% would, when you get to like level 15 and your eyes are only on kind of gold level drops, I would love to just, completely ignore, grey kind of bottom tier level gear. I guess the flip side of it is you don't need to pick it up.
Yeah.
So there is that. But you kind of, I don't know about you guys, but when I destroy something, I find myself picking up the loot for it anyway, just out of sheer reflex.
Yeah.
And it does. You get to the end and your loot's filling, you're like, oh no, I need to like yeet so many things. But for me, I think it's one of those things that I didn't find the loot cadence that bad. I still don't think the treasure goblins are that great, if I'm honest with you. I think they're just like, I don't think they're worth the amount of chasing you have to do for them because they are relatively chunky. And I don't really feel like they are 100% worth it the minute. But the problem well, it's not a problem in that it's a good thing, but I don't know what legendary it is, but I got a legendary drop that effectively with twisted blades, which are the assassins like throwing blades, when they come back, they're like a boomerang and they spin around you. And since then, I have just demolished everything and everything has felt so much easier.
That was your game breaking moment.
It really was. That was the thing. It is that I got this legendary item and I felt like I was like, oh my god, now I'm actually strong, but potentially too strong to a point where I was at the closing scenes of the game and I was absolutely mangling these big massive bosses.
Yeah.
And I was a bit like, this feels a little bit unbalanced, and that the item is so good, and I understand that it's the end of the game, you're getting good loot, but it feels so strong that enemies are kind of useless now. So I think that the cadence is generally pretty good. Yeah, 100%. If you could turn off silver, like that'd be great. But I do think some weapons potentially, these random drops need to be saved for the end game. Otherwise, you complete the campaign like that with them.
Yeah, there should be at least I found sometimes there was the flex and then the wane of like you would be super overpowered and then it would catch up, and then bang, you're super overpowered again. But there was a certain point where I had an ability that was this big overhead smash, and if it killed, it instantly recharged. So if I had the right level of enemies, I could just like bang, 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 bang. And when I got this overhead kind of, it was like a big club or big axe or something like that. Hammer, that's the word. No, axe.
It's a hot day.
Yeah, it's a very hot day. When I got
Don't know if we mentioned it yet.
I got this big ass hammer, this big Mjolnir looking motherfucker, and I was like, this is going to carry me for the next 15 levels. And sure enough, right towards the end, it was still there. Even when I had this slightly better stuff elsewhere, I was like, I'm going to keep you. I don't care that it still says level required 30 and I'm like 49 at this point. I was like, I'm still going to keep you right there. Adam, what about yourself? How did you find the loot in the game?
Yeah, I thought the loot was pretty good. I've got an issue with a specific way in terms of like how the loot is like presented. That's a holdover, but I thought it was great. There wasn't a point where I was kind of like severely over leveled to the point that I wasn't ever being challenged. So I don't know, maybe I just got a bit luckier with my loot drops. What would annoy me more is when I would have come across a dungeon in the world or a cellar. I can't remember which of the two, and it would have a specific aspect for a specific class upon completion. And being the sucker I am, I'm like, aspect, the barbarian. I'm like, well, I know I'm a necromancer, but I'm going to go in there for the gains and stuff. But then it did mean that, when I did find a dungeon that was relevant to my class, I like the fact that it was at least, it removed that randomization a little bit. It was honest with you about what the kind of things you're going to get. Because in those early hours, it is all about just what level is this, am I seeing the green? Yes, yes, yes. Then I'm good to go. And, that leads me on to my point where it's maybe a kind of a separate issue, but what I really came to appreciate in Diablo 3 before getting into the nitty gritty in the later hours is that whenever you would pick up a new loot item, there'd be a little icon in the lower left that would tell you the attributes, whether it was red, green, green, or green, red, green. And I felt like they don't do that for Diablo 4. It's kind of, you just have to open up your menu, hover over each of the bits, and then sort of assess for yourself, which slows down the literal pace of the game a little bit. But aside from that, I thought the loot itself was really cool. And very rarely did I come across loot that wasn't suited for my character, which would have gotten annoying. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, Lauren, 30 seconds. Your overall thoughts on Diablo 4?
I think it's really, really good. I think that fans of Diablo 2 will love it. It definitely harkens back to that darkness, that despair, all that type of thing. I think it is accessible enough to new players. So if you've never played the game, go for it. And yeah, hail Lilith. She's absolutely mommy, and I will not hear anything else.
You're Scottish, mate. What's this mommy pish?
Mate, if Sifa said that she was my mom, I don't think other people would understand that. So
I prefer that. Aaron, 30 seconds. Diablo 4.
Yeah, Diablo 4, I agree with Lauren. It's an absolutely fantastic entry into the series. Even though you've got those callbacks, as someone who didn't play Diablo 1 or Diablo 2, I still had a bloody great time with it. Necromancer class for life. If you want to have instant fun from the get-go, that is the one to play. Control the undead. Even though we didn't, none of us played the druid class, and that's probably what I'm going to choose as my second, because turning into a bear and then a werewolf mid-fight, everything I've seen from the promos, it looks awesome. So yeah, Diablo 4, grittier, darker, but also all the more fun. Diablo 4, get it played.
Biblically accurate druid. Well, you can check out our full reviews on Mirror Gaming, PC Games N, and VGC, where you're going first. I know you. The VGC massive. Thank you very much to Lauren and Aaron for joining us. Very quickly, Lauren, where can we find you on Twitter?
I am at the Mori on Twitter. It is M0 like the number RRI.
Aaron.
I am at It's Me Aaron P, and that's with 2 A's and 1 R.
I'm Jordan Midler, because it's my name.
Ah!
Say goodbye, Lauren.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been fun.
Say goodbye, Aaron.
See ya. Thanks for having me.
I will see you next time.